Welcome back. Today I want to talk about the spiritual lightnings that can be experienced in the spiritual eye. It's very dark. And the way that I describe these is a cascading waves and waves and waves of light. So let's talk about that. So you might be familiar with the autobiography of a yogi and the story of Ram Gopal. Yogananda wants to run away from his teacher. He's fed up with monastic life and he decides he's going to run away into the hills to meditate. He is leaving his teacher. He's abandoning everything that he's been doing. And so he feels bad about it and he wants to get the blessing of another saint. So he decides to seek out a certain student of Lahiri Mahasaya who was dedicated to long practices of meditation in isolation. He sought out Ram Gopal. He got his address from a friend, and he has a bunch of misadventures on the way there. And finally, he arrives and he meets the saint. The saint knows immediately who he is and why he's there. He's so overcome by the vibration of this person that he asks, "Sir, why don't you grant me a samadhi?" In other words, would you transfer? There's a certain kind of conductivity when you're in the presence of somebody who meditates very deeply that can be transferred to a certain extent. Ram Gopal says, "You are asking illumination from me, while I am wondering, inconsiderable as I am, and with the little meditation I have done, if I have succeeded in pleasing God." Mukunda responds, "Sir, have you not been single-heartedly seeking God for a long time?" Ram Gopal tells him, "Well, don't you see, my dear boy, God is eternity itself." Mukunda says, "I lay down on my blankets, closing my eyes. I saw flashes of lightning. The vast space within me was a chamber of molten light. I opened my eyes and observed the same dazzling radiance. The room became a part of the infinite vault that I was beholding with interior vision." The yogi asked him, "Why don't you go to sleep?" "Sir, how can I sleep when lightning is blazing around me, whether my eyes are shut or open?" You are blessed to be having this experience. The spiritual radiations are not easily seen. That is what we're talking about. I love the autobiography of the yogi. And the thing that you have to understand about it is that how many hands it's passed through. Yogananda had a number of people who were working on the script simultaneously, helping him to hash out all of his stories. And after that, it went through, I think I have about 7 editions now of the various iterations of the autobiography of the yogi. I was collecting them for a while. I think whenever you're reading a spiritual text, you should keep in mind that you may have to translate it for yourself. That doesn't mean we should just invent our own connotation of whatever we're reading. At the same time, we shouldn't just take things in and not think about them. There's an experience that I have been having for some years now. At one point, it dawned on me that this was the spiritual radiation that Ram Gopal was talking about. And it's a wave. So while looking at the spiritual eye, you may see the gold or you may see only the blue. You may even see only the star. All of these things are possible. While you're looking at whatever you're looking at, a wave of light will cascade from the top at about this kind of beat, right? Just wave after wave after wave after wave of light. And this, I believe, is part of the heart knot. So Lahiri Mahasaya spoke of 3 knots, right? The tongue knot, which has to do with the magnet in either the kutasa or the medulla oblongata. The medulla is the source of the spiritual eye. So when you, "Oh, now I get it. That's the medulla." When you strain your neck and you, "Oh, now I get it." That is the medulla oblongata. And that is the source of the spiritual eye. So that's where it's really taking place. So when you feel that magnet, That's where it's coming from the medulla oblongata. And then there's the heart knot, and then there's the coccyx knot. Well, the heart knot can be experienced in many different ways. And one of the ways is when you begin to see blue light. Now, if you press the eyes, you can see light. What I'm talking about is a little different. When you're meditating and it suddenly just shows up spontaneously, and you see blue light, or maybe you'll see gold light, or maybe a little white light. But that is a sign that the heart knot is beginning to unravel. And when you experience these cascading waves of light that pass through, like a wave of the ocean on the beach, the ocean is still there. You still see the spiritual eye, but a wave passes over it. As if it's refreshing the image on your computer. It just passes through. And it passes and passes and passes. That's another experience of the heart knot unraveling, that you've come to this deeper state where you can experience these waves of light pass through the spiritual eye and through the whole body. So when you see that in the spiritual eye, that's another experience of the heart knot. And when you feel the whole thing, it's amazing. And I've only heard from one other person, a very advanced yogi that contacted me through this YouTube channel. I've only heard from one other person that they experienced this deeper state where the solidity of the body disappears, and suddenly it feels like you're just a wave of energy. So you may feel that the shell of your body is in place, right? The outer shell, the skin, but inside you feel as if you are just a wash of energy. And it happened to me once so powerfully. It felt like God had picked me up by my spiritual eye and was just blowing right through me. It's just this wave of energy, and the solidity was just gone. And it was really strange the first time it happened to me, because nobody warned me, of course. I was so surprised. So these are all expressions of the heart knot. And this coincides with something else, which is very, very deep. And that is one of the deepest experiences of bliss. One, not the deepest, not the primary one, but a very deep experience of bliss. When the chakra is completely empty, you may say to yourself, I am cleaned out psychologically. I am peaceful. You may be in meditation. Your body may feel electrified. You may feel a ton of peace, and yet there still may be unconscious material that is bothering the psychology in the chakras, a deep, deep something that hasn't unwound just yet out of your psychology, out of your chakras. It's almost like layers of mist. And I know it's not a very solid description, but it's a very light covering of the unconscious material that can be held in the chakra. So this is why Kriya Yoga, this is why cleaning your chakras, because there's so much unconscious material that you can't understand or put your finger on consciously. It's an unconscious material that has to come out. And when that comes out completely, you may experience waves of bliss. And that's how everybody usually describes bliss, as a waves of bliss. But I would more aptly describe it as a heartbeat. It's a heartbeat. It's a beat of like this, of bliss. And it just passes over you. And it's so blissful that it's hard. You have to surrender yourself to that bliss. It's really overwhelming. And so you can't just notice it. You actually have to let go and let it wash over you continuously. So that's a really deep experience of bliss. So here's the thing. The beat of that bliss and the beat of the cascading waves of light that pass through the spiritual eye, it's the same speed of beat. It's a very fast, it's a faster beat. And I believe it has to do with the frequency, or one of the frequencies, of the gamma brainwave. And that's what we're experiencing. And I have a theory that this is the heartbeat of the Anandamaya Kosha. So you have a physical heart that beats, and without it, you wouldn't be alive, right? But what about the Anandamaya Kosha? Or to put it into more grounded terms, what about some of the primary beats of your medulla oblongata, the electrical frequencies that pass through your body that keep you alive? And that's what I think we're seeing and feeling in that bliss. Now, when you see the cascading light, you may or may not be aware of the bliss, depending on how deep you are in a trance. You haven't reset the system deep enough to experience that bliss just yet. More and more now, I see meditation as a resetting of the brain, a reboot. You're coming in from a different angle and you're rebooting the system. And to do that, you have to come down to the lowest frequency of the delta brainwave, and then you come back up into the gamma brainwave. So it's a very, like I said before, it's a circuitous route, but it's a true thing. It's a truth. So you may be working a long time to get to that kind of bliss, and it may be very frustrating. Don't be frustrated. This is a long process. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And if you can watch the video on the clinical mindfulness, that is designed to put you in touch with the very first experiences of bliss, which is the tingling that can be felt through the skin and through the spine. And that's a gateway. That's a window into the dorsal vagal nerve, into the freeze response in the body. And that response is blissful. Kriya Yoga, the Kriya Yoga of Lahiri Mahasaya, is designed to give you meditative mellows. And those mellows should start right away. And that clinical mindfulness will teach you to focus on the correct things in meditation so you can get in touch with that freeze response very easily and quickly and begin to assimilate those meditative mellows into your being, into your life, so that they can begin to affect you right away. So if you see the spiritual lightnings or the cascading waves of light, of bliss, if you feel them in your heart, you may feel them in any chakra. If you experience that, know you've come a very long ways. Congratulations. And if you haven't, go check out that clinical mindfulness, because I put that together to help us understand meditative mellows. I'll be talking again about that and on different kinds of bliss that can be experienced in meditation. So I hope this was valuable for you guys. If it was, be sure to click subscribe and the little bell down there. Thanks so much for sticking around, and I'll see you next time.